lives as well, and comparing notes with Jen. 50% of what I'm going to share today is her knowledge as well. So if it's not always my like message, I do put it in a way that's compartmentalized for easy digestion. But and I know that she's not going to like that, but I have to give credit where it's due. So yeah, I just watch and pick up stuff, and I get feelings into things, and I spend a lot of time kind of contemplating the nature of what I'd like to share. And today felt like the right time to do that, and it seems as if this is an opportunity where I can really begin to open up something here. And what was really interesting about the whole experience is that for me personally, the inspiration for what I want to talk about today actually came from my own personal realization of my own soul's journey, and how I've been trying to access the depth of why certain conditioning patterns have been the way that they have for me as a soul. Try to figure out and become aware of, and have become aware of, different patterns of emotional dynamics that are, moving through my body, and what my process is as me, as Simon. And a big light bulb just went off 2 days ago, actually. And so that really gave me the opportunity to say, okay, I'm ready. And it's funny because it wasn't actually it wasn't related to Leo-Aquarius at all. It was actually related to the Virgo-Pisces axis, and the natural transition that we are currently going through. So I feel like there's a lot of context in today's conversation that I want to bring across to everybody. And I'm going to try to do it in a way that is very impactful. So for me personally, like today, I really want to, for me personally, I really want to translate a message inside of myself that is able to really have a big impact, to really give perspective on something that I really, really feel on such a deep level. And it's really where I am right now within my own emotional space, and what I feel that is right for me to share, like what is going to influence a lot of what I feel I would like to offer you as the souls that are, not only interacting with me through YouTube, but everybody else that I want to feel inspired to share what I want to share. A lot of that is going to come through today. And I'm super excited. It might not look like that on my face, but I'm super excited. So enough with the mysticalness of what I'm wanting to talk about today. I am also at the same time just giving a couple of minutes for people to respond to social media and to join us today. So, feel free to, I'll just spend like maybe 5 minutes or so just maybe answering some questions if anybody is interested in, if you want to share some questions or ask some questions. I'd be happy to respond to that while I just kind of adjust my screen so that I've got all the information necessary available for me. No, you're not going to do that. Okay, yeah, fantastic. There's actually quite a lot of people that have already joined, so I'm super excited about that. So yeah, just I see that somebody has written 11 Abrook, and they already have natal North Node in Leo-Aquarius. Is this important? Yeah, absolutely. If your North Node is in Leo, and you're going to be having the North Node right now, the transiting North Node, move over your North Node, you would be going through a nodal return. And this is a big thing for you, okay? For the last 18 years, because it takes around about 18 years for the nodes to move around the whole entire zodiac, that cycle is completing for yourself and a new one will be beginning. So, if you've got anybody that has got a nodal axis that's in Virgo-Pisces, in other words, the North Node in Virgo and the South Node in Pisces, ask them what their life has been like for the last 18 months. And whenever you have like a nodal return, it's always going to be a very deep karmic process. So I wouldn't be surprised if, for anybody that does have the south node in Aquarius, north node in the fifth house, in Leo, or the other way around, you will be experiencing deep karmic dynamics. For anybody that's got, your south node in Taurus and your north node in Scorpio, or your south node in Scorpio and your north node in Taurus, these nodes are going to be squaring. And I've just recently completed, the north and south nodes squaring my natal nodes, and I mean, I went through a complete transformation in that thing. So squares themselves, if you've got south node in Scorpio, north node in Scorpio, that type of dynamic, these nodes are going to be squaring you. So you will be coming across some dynamics in your life that will be changing on a karmic level. So yeah, and for anybody else that's got questions that you want to ask the community in the chat, like, feel free to do that, by the way. I'm sure there are other people that would love to interact with you as well. So okay. Rosali asks the question, will you be touching on the alignment with Regulus and the Palladians? Now, unfortunately for myself, I haven't actually gone really in depth in terms of the nature of those fixed stars within the astrology chart. So my personal intuitive relationship to that is not really available. So no, I won't be touching on that. But I wouldn't be surprised that what I feel and what I want to share today contains a lot of what that will probably be playing out on one of the many layers that that humanity will be evolving itself through this period of time. Okay, so let's have a look. Like, what else is there? Yeah, so Heart Union writes North Node is in Scorpio, South Node's in Taurus. Yeah, so you'll be going through a square at this stage. And again, like I said, just squares just generally create tension. So it's like tectonic plates, and they're pushing against each other like that, and something needs to move and shift. And when that happens, you just, like, something changes in your life, and you just basically evolve in that sense. Okay, Tamri is saying my north node is in Leo and my south node is in Aquarius. I really need for you to tell me what I should expect. To me, it's going to be a very generalized response, because of course the context of your chart is not available for me at this stage. But this is something that maybe I could respond to in this way. For every single person that so look to your Uranus in your chart. In fact, that answer that I want to share with you, Timri, that's going to come within the message, because that's part of today's conversation. Okay. So Johnny, you were writing, my Mars is in the 11th house in Leo. My North Node is in the 7th, 8th, right? House in Aries. I got divorced in August 2015. Wife is Sun in Leo Sun, as you had mentioned in your reading. And something inside wants to make peace with her. Is now the time? Yeah, I mean, if that's what you're feeling, and if that's what you're kind of like being drawn to do at this point in time, I would highly encourage doing something like that. But my opinion at the same time is also, whatever the experience is going to be for you is going to be what it's going to be, right? So if you place any expectations on what it should be versus what it's going to be, then you could set yourself up for a situation of being disillusioned by what you were trying to do versus what could naturally happen. So just allow yourself to naturally interact with the experience in a way that has no expectations, but just is coming from the space of, what you want to share and how you would like to do that. Okay, so Heart Union is saying, how are you feeling, Simon? Thanks very much for the question. I do appreciate that. Right now, I have a lot of sadness in my heart. I have a lot of joy in my heart at the same time. I have many different layers of emotional dynamics that are with me today. Um, for me personally, like where I'm living here at the moment in Sweden, and probably in other parts of the world, I'm assuming it's just maybe in Sweden, it's Mother's Day. And for me personally, I don't really have a relationship with my mother in a way that I feel is, up for appreciation and honoring, because there's a lot of like, sort of unresolved material and trauma there and things that have really not been okay. So I have a lot of sadness today with me. And one of my friends that I, spent, in fact, I have just like loads of emotions coming to my face at this stage. One of my friends that was really influential for us moving from South Africa to the UK 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago. He had passed away a couple of years ago, and I'd also kind of like really, really got triggered a lot by those emotions as well. Just like, you know, so, but I'm not in a state in which the sadness or the pain, and that's what I want to talk about today as well. I feel like that's why I feel really empowered in this conversation, because the emotional space that I want to talk from is exactly where I am today. Like it's a space of like raw emotion that carries a lot of what the human experience has really been for us. And I really want to get into that. I really want to get into that right now. Just get some water over here. Um, so, you know, uh, I, I really, I really feel that the experience of like I have Uranus at the moment. So you know how Uranus is currently in Aries. It's around about 27 degrees, 20, sorry, not 27 degrees, 25 degrees, 26 degrees Aries. Okay, that's where it is today, Uranus. And it has a very like large influence currently because the nodal axis, in other words, the south node is in Aquarius. So the planet that is being influenced by the south node and the other way around is related to what Uranus is doing at this stage. Okay, that's how we get specific on the nature of what that south node is going to be doing for us. And so for me, that south node, that transiting Uranus is on top of is in my fourth house, and it is also opposed my Pluto. So I have Uranus opposed Pluto at this point in time. And but I just wanted to say as well, and I know I'm jumping over here, but I also want to say that I do have a lot of joy as well, right? Like simultaneously, and that's what I want to talk about with this new moon that's just recently taken place, and how Jen was, she was really sharing with me when we were talking about doing and writing the article and digesting and processing, and what we wanted to share is that there are so many different layers of frequencies that are currently like moving through us at this stage, that we can feel almost, we can feel so many different emotional patterns within ourselves that are linked with so many different timelines. And the fact that we have this capacity to feel into and experience multiple timelines of the soul's experience. Remember, the soul itself doesn't have this concept of man-made time the way that we intellectualize it, right? It operates in a quantum experience. So if I were to say, for instance, say like the soul would be here as a foundation, and imagine as if you could like look at the nature of this, like what I'm trying to interact with you with right now. Say, for instance, this is the foundation, right? Yeah, just between my fingers, the way they're touching. And if you could look into space between my face and the screen, you would notice that there is space between your phone and, say, for instance, where your face begins, right? Imagine that there are different points in space, okay, in which your soul has memories of dynamics, like emotional crystallizations, and they're like quantified, so that they're not like in a line, or they're not going out in a diagonal form like that. It's like they're all sporadic. It's like they have, do you understand what I'm talking about here? And we have access and sensitivity at this point in time to feel into those multiple layers of emotions that are relating to different periods. So, like, as I said, I've got sadness and grief around experiences of childhood, a lot of sadness around waking up to a lot of what my soul carries within itself around its own like woundedness. And of course as well, my friendship with my friend that had, you know, moved with me to the UK at that point in time, and it was a very profound experience because we literally just kind of like got on an airplane and went over to the UK. We didn't know anybody over there, and it was just kind of like we needed to do this. We needed to just thrive. And we shared an incredible amount of memories and things. We pioneered, we laid the foundation for a lot of souls that are living there right now, by doing it first, like immigrating in that way. And there's so many different emotional connections to the different timelines. And I also have a lot of joy because, you know, just watching my children today interact with life and interact with family that we had a gathering today with a certain family, that just interacting and being able to watch their innocence, and also to watch a whole entire like generation of people. You know, we're talking from Pluto Leo all the way to Pluto and Capricorn in a beautiful picture, right? And in my human design, I have a line 6 in my environment. So the most like amazing environment for me in terms of my what my body desires and wants is the ocean. It wants the beach. And there was this beautiful photo that was taken today. We've done it for a couple of years now, but there was a photo taken with all of the generations dating from Pluto in Leo all the way up until Pluto in Capricorn in this one photo. And there was so much joy because you could see, you know, the whole entire spectrum of archetypes and souls and people just experiencing nature. And it was in the most, for me, it was the most, it's the best environment. It's where my body wants to be. So that sadness and joy I'm experiencing simultaneously. You understand? And that's really what I feel like this nodal axis is going to be about for us. This opportunity to really be able to access these multiple timelines that we have, and to Uranus wherever it sits in your chart. Okay, so like for me, as an example, as I was saying, I have transiting Uranus in my 4th house at this stage, and it's just moved into that place. So for me, like I'm really being able to access a very profound sense of depth regarding the nature of emotions, and also to be able to understand how emotions work in the body and what is the process of evolving through the emotional body. Okay, and that's a concept, and or not a concept, but it's a paradigm of truth that evolutionary astrology, you know, is very much rooted in. And I'll talk about that as and go more in depth in that process. But so just kind of like sharing with you some information about, you know, what is going on within my own soul's journey and why I'm connecting with you through this lens, and what is kind of influencing the backstory or the story of what I would want to share. And the nature of emotions as well, and how I've become like more aware with that Uranus transiting my 4th house right now, and awakening the depth of emotions that exists within my psyche. You know, Uranus in the chart, wherever it is in your astrology chart, wherever you have Aquarius in your astrology chart, wherever you've got planets in the 11th house, or the sign that is ruling your 11th house of your astrology, look at those symbols and notice that that is where you as a human being and a soul have come to decondition yourself. In other words, to liberate from thought patterns and conditioning and all forms of identities, emotional complexes, emotional associations with certain things, and to decondition from that. And that, of course, brings out the archetype of trauma, which, again, I'll get into. So I have this 4th house transit, and what I've begun to really get intensely connected to is the endocrine system, and how the body, through the endocrine system, is relating or is signaling to the body and the release of the hormones into the body when we are experiencing emotions, when we are interfacing with reality. So let me give you a backdrop of what I'm talking about here, okay? And the process of healing. The process of healing. So the focus and context here is this healing experience. So I want to be with the sadness, I want to be with this pain, but I'm also hypersensitive to, or paying attention deeply to, the way that my body is responding on a hormonal level when I'm accessing this pain, when I'm actually like feeling into it. And I've noticed that, and this is kind of interesting, because the pituitary gland and the pineal gland itself are directly responsible for secreting certain hormones within to the body and doing two things. If you are sad in some way, shape, or form, the body identifies that there's something here that needs to be kind of like numbed out. To it's a painful experience. It identifies through that process. And when this pain has been with myself, I've watched how my body wants to secrete certain, or it secretes certain hormones into my body, and I can feel it going into my body, and I start to feel more like passive. I start I watch how my body starts and my psyche starts to disassociate. I start to become less responsive to the environment around me. Okay. And this is not a negative thing if you're conscious of it, because it's just the nature of the biology. But if you're unconscious of it, make the correlation to things like fear mongering, war. Think about the nature of how the news operates through consistently stimulating the reptilian part of the brain to send signals through the amygdala, and how it naturally just controls the way that the endocrine system as well as our emotional responses are in this place, right? So we're naturally like allowing ourselves to disassociate. And as we're disassociating from our experiences, we tend to become numbed out by the way that reality is operating for us. It becomes too overwhelming. It becomes too much for us to process psychologically. Maybe the cosmology that we have over ourselves is at a point in which we can't identify with the bigger truths or the bigger experiences, the bigger emotions that are moving through us, or what is happening in our reality, because that is what the human experience is. We have these five senses, and we are interacting and interfacing with the phenomena of reality. So as we interface with it, we then have the nature of our conditioning that then becomes to allows us to digest what we are experiencing, what we are going through. So that is the nature of the karmic dynamics that each of us carry when we have our relationship with our parents, when we have our relationship with our siblings, when we have our relationship to work, as an example, to career, those types of things, social interaction, all of those things are the way that we process it. And Capricorn in itself correlates, the Capricorn archetype correlates to those boundaries in consciousness, the limitations that we have within our physical definitions, all right, the prefrontal cortex, and the way that we have defined reality for ourselves. As we interact with life, that prefrontal cortex, as Saturn and what definitions we've got, that gives us the capacity to process it, right? So when we are interacting with experiences in our day-to-day, and we begin to become more conscious of the body's responses to interacting with what we are doing, it's an incredibly powerful experience, because you're actually beginning to take control of how you are operating through the body, and how the psyche and the body are trying to merge, right? So this is what the whole entire point was with the Virgo-Pisces axis, okay? So I hope everybody's following me at this stage. I don't have the capacity to be very focused in the nature of expression, so I kind of move very quickly onto different lines that make sense at some point down the road. So just kind of like sitting and listening to what I'm sharing over here will be a lot more easier. But if you're trying to focus, it's going to be difficult in that sense, because my brain is not set up that way. which I spent a great deal of time like being completely rejecting that part of myself. But okay, so we're coming back to this body, and we're coming back to the relating of how the body is interacting with reality. So life is moving through us, we're interfacing with it, and how we interface with it, how that marriage creates itself, is through the psychological and emotional complexes and dynamics that we have, you know, that have formed within ourselves, that have been crystallized within ourselves, and how we have defined ourselves on an ego level, right? Because that's all the ego really is. It's just conditioning. It's just emotional responses. It's the nature of how you have been conditioned throughout your growing up your life, the unconscious patterning that exists in your psyche that allows you to then interface with reality, right? So as we're kind of like interacting with our day to day, and we recognizing that marriage, we are beginning to become more aware of what the Virgo-Pisces is actually about, the whole Virgo-Pisces axis in astrology, and what the last 18 months has really been about, and the purpose to understand Christ consciousness, right, without using too much biblical jargon here. The process of bringing consciousness into the body, bringing consciousness into the body. And the way that we do that is by firstly honoring the divine feminine, right? The divine feminine is the body. And we're taking masculine principle and we're incarnating it into the body. And so that marriage, when it gets met, creates this beautiful horizontal and vertical axis. And humanity is moving through a period of time in which that process of merging the horizontal plane of the feminine and the masculine principle, right? Because we have experienced very, like for a very long time, we've experienced the matriarchal experience. We've experienced the feminine of intuition and responding to life through the natural cycles. And then for whatever reason, whatever happened to Earth at some point, okay, whatever traumatic experience initiated into the development of the ego, which was the masculine principle. And so the masculine principle allowed us to protect ourselves. That is what it ultimately is for, is the nature of protection and the nature of consciousness, like conscious realization, is pure light. So through the last, like, let's just for argument's sake, say the last 6,000 years, we have been strongly developing this masculine principle where it's just been one go. Okay. And as a byproduct of this masculine development, we have established the world like we have in the West today, right? If you observe all of our buildings, they are very much vertical. If you observe all of the nature of how very important buildings are also created in the world by elites, you'll notice that there's always a high-rise building like that, and it tends to point to the top, right? This is the masculine form. We're trying to ascend. We're trying to go up to God. And the context of what I'm sharing with you today is that the Virgo-Pisces axis has just completed itself, okay? But it hasn't simply been about just these kind of like jargons that have been thrown out through, normal astrology conversations on the internet. It's a very, 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 very profound and deep frequency that has been influencing the nature of humanity for a long time. And that the context of that frequency is changing rapidly, which is why you would probably have noticed over the last 5 days with Venus making a square to Pluto. Okay, that's what I'm talking about with the nature of the unconscious emotional material for everybody probably being really intense over the last 5 days because of that square. Like Pluto's been really, really, really bringing up material for us to process, whatever subconscious layers are there that are keeping us disempowered through fear and paradigms that have not actually, belief systems that we've held from past life dynamics or other, parts of ourselves. So this frequency of this Virgo-Pisces axis goes deeper, and that's why I'm spending time on this, because it is the platform for everybody to understand what this Leo-Aquarius axis is about and how to actually connect with it in a way that is bringing more of the heart-centeredness, more of the vibration of love to your own life, and not in a mental way. And that's something that, again, we'll talk about. So So you've got this Virgo-Pisces axis, okay, that has been moving. So over the last 2,000 years, in the context of the precession of the equinox, in the context of the Virgo-Pisces axis that has been moving humanity and been the background for the last 2,000 years, the background frequency, okay, the Virgo-Pisces axis. So religion and the masculine principle has been ascending through an existential savior, okay, through God, right? So God has become a principle in which we are all trying to achieve through. We're all trying to ascend to. We're all trying to get to. So what that does is it creates this interesting dynamic in which there is a savior and an ascension process that we all need to then achieve. So by doing that, we need practical, service-orientated ways of doing that that allow the body and our minds and our consciousness, or whatever it is, to activate this process. So what you see through religion, through the archetype of religion, okay, is a masculine God that is then becoming a place in which we are trying to achieve. So if we translate this, we talk about Pisces and we talk about God. We talk about Pisces being the totality. We're talking about God being the totality. We're talking about Pisces being everything that is just there. And we're talking about God in the same context. So the translation through religion and the translation through the influence of the masculine principle is that through the Virgo-Pisces axis and the undercurrent of human experience over the last 2,000 years, which me, you, and many other souls that have incarnated before in this lifetime will carry dynamics of some degree in which the conditioning and emotional experiences that you as a person carry will have been imprinted from lifetimes there. So you have a look at experiences like the Greeks, you have a look at experiences like the Roman times, and there's the gods that exist outside of ourselves on a greater scale, and the relationship formed through that. We look at the development of any form of military weaponry. It is a projectile that is getting shot at something. The architecture of all forms of military weaponry has got some barrel or some trajectory that is pointed at a direction and that is aimed to injure slash whatever is opposing, okay, whatever is opposing. And this type of thinking, this type of process has manifested through the separation that has occurred through this Virgo-Pisces axis. We have been having war for a longer period of time, but through this Virgo-Pisces axis, the separation that manifested through the thinking patterns that have come about through us being separated from God and needing to then ascend to a point in which we have then become aware to ascended master. But the problem here for human beings, okay, is that the Virgo part of it says that we need to be of service to this process, and it's got this wires crossed. Because the process of being of service has meant that there is something inherently lacking within ourselves, and that our devotion to the service of God, i.e. an external savior, has then reached a point where our sense of lack, low self-worth, and the process of shame and guilt, man-made guilt, sits within us. And this is such a silent experience and yet so loud, okay? Every single day of my life, I get the emotional thrown in my face of how that conditioning sits in the backdrop of our psyche through my children. Because they are a Pluto Capricorn generation. My intention with them is to not allow the transmission of that type of trauma, that type of like dynamic, that type of consciousness, that type of material to be passed on to them. And so every single time I'm interacting with them, I'm noticing on some levels, like, and this is not always, I'm saying that every single day I will get triggered in some way, shape or form because I'm interfacing with what I don't want through what exists within me. And that's how I'm able to actually purge it and also recognize this within inside of myself. And that's why I was saying to you today that a lot of what this message that I want to share with you actually comes from the realization that my soul on some very, very profound level has been spending a great deal of time honoring this existential savior and following a belief system that has said, I'm total devotion, and has completely and utterly rejected the feminine. Okay, and I'll get onto this and how this leads into this process, right? So we have the separation, we have the war, we have all these things that are manifesting from the separation between humanity and God. Okay, so the separation begins to exist, right? And immediately through that separation, what happens for us is, like I said, this Virgo comes into the process and we have to be of service. So we see it in the dynamics of the sadomasochism experience. We see it in the dynamics of our employees and their employer. As an example, right? There's always a hierarchy that is happening, a hierarchy, right? Hierarchy, ascension, right? Everything's going up to one pinnacle point, and then whatever sits at the top over there has the power over them. And that structure is falling. And that is what I want to share with you today. That is the key, that the structure of this process, this structure, and we all know this. It's not something like, oh my God, this is revolutionary. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that this structure is falling because when you begin to understand that the North Node in Leo is awakening you to realize that your heart and the nature of your soul's journey does not need to be suppressed and rejected for paradigms and social expectations and norms that honor this pyramid experience, because the new paradigm, the Aquarius age, is all about sharing, inclusion, and acceptance of individuality, where it's not about judgment, it is not of others, it's not about the this and the that, it's not about the polarity of this and that. Like I said, it's about resonance. It is all about resonance. All you have to do to test this out is to go onto YouTube and look at your subscribes and notice and ask yourself, why do you subscribe to this? And you'll respond by going, it resonates with me. I find a common interest. I share something with this person here, whether it be that their channel represents just happiness because of the silliness that they do, and I resonate with those people. I resonate with this astrologer because I like the way that they talk. I resonate with this tarot card reader because I enjoy their personality. And the process of becoming aware that each of us with this North Node in Leo is about stepping out of this thing of Virgo-Pisces consciousness, in which we have manifested the structures of trying to ascend to something through the masculine principle and so through devotion, but the integration of the feminine, and that is our body. So now we're coming back into the body. We're taking the higher, the process of masculine, and this all occurred when we have Uranus and Neptune made a conjunction in Capricorn between 1992 and 1994. And we have this science and spirit merging together. Science and spirit merging together. And it is about the realization that science objective measurement of what we are seeing. The objective measurement of what we are seeing. And then allowing us to fuse that with the spirit, the spirituality, the deeper essence of purpose that is non-physical within ourselves, right? So Uranus and Neptune makes this conjunction in Capricorn, and where is Pluto today, right? Pluto is transiting over that whole entire part of the whole entire Pluto and Scorpio generation. All right, and for any of you that are here with the Pluto and Scorpios at this stage, that you're born between 1988 and 1989, I would say, to 1995, that whole entire thing there, it's the whole paradigm. So it's not about going to the dark ages, because there's a lot of stuff on the world right now in which we need to save the world through going eco. We need to save the world because the world is Mother Nature is going to destroy us in this sense, and it's going to do. I mean, this is insanity. I know this is going to be incredibly confrontational and triggering for a lot of you that have maybe felt very much about green living. Now, for me, let's get this foundation straight. Okay, we are taking the ability to understand the development of our masculine principle, and now we're going to infuse that into creating things that supports humanity, fused with how nature works. Right? That is our inventions. That is the most like organic process here, for us to develop things in which we understand that the sun provides us with solar electricity. Okay, it's always been there, right? So we develop and we engineer technology that allows us to capture the sun's light and then through that process turn it into electricity for us to warm our homes up. Therefore, and this is not something that's new. It's not like, oh my God, this is revolutionary again. We've been doing this. It's just that now what we need to do is encourage this expansion of this type of process of thinking to the point where every single town and city has people on entrepreneurs, people that have the feeling that inside of them they have a unique special gift, and every single one of us has this, and this is what this North Node's about. It's like we have this capacity where we've created this platform for us to exist within on the earth, that we don't need to live in the dark, and the dark ages were different. We don't need to live in this place in which we need to, fight for our food. We've mastered that, okay? But the way that we're going to do this is we're going to engineer the way that we can grow our foods through understanding science and nature, and then just being able to support that and creating communities. The whole entire new paradigm is about everybody coming together and sharing their talents and gifts as the new currency. Again, not new, it's already happening. Just saying that this North Node is the activation point in which the Virgo-Pisces axis was us getting in touch with that spirit and matter were antagonistic. That spirit, right? Spirit, consciousness, the X process was all about following God. Adam, right? Following God. Adam and Eve, the mythology of Adam and Eve in itself, the fall from the Garden of Eden, right? When we look at this process, and this is the core of this teaching here, okay? All forms of religion, we even take Buddhism to a certain example, right? Ascension, okay? We're coming back into the body. We're coming back into cleaning our body. We're coming back into cleaning our foods, so that when we recognize that we're eating foods that are clean for us, the endocrine system is allowing for the hormones to be released into our body in a clean way. Our blood system is being cleaned. We don't have crystallized emotions that are stuck in layers within our muscles. This is why we would do a detox. This is why we would constantly keep on checking the nature of our vitamin and mineral balance in the state. Like this over here should be your most important thing. The body, the vehicle, this vehicle and its ecosystem should be your number one priority, with obviously your family. But it should be your number one priority in keeping it in check. Because if that is not in check, then the way in which you're going to not only access the consciousness, to raise your frequency, to allow yourself to understand what this body is here for, it just deteriorates. So you want to support this. This is your temple. This is the church. The body is the church. But what we have done through the masculine experience has created physical churches outside of ourselves, and then gone into those churches to access God, right? Whereas that should be a daily experience. It's like consciousness, spirit, into the matter. And this is your form, right? And honoring that process, honoring the nature of how that operates. As an example, understanding the nature of why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Doesn't mean psychoanalyze it. It just means recognize that if you're in an environment and you're feeling a certain way, Like, that should be honored. Why is there something in this environment that I don't feel right for myself? You know, like being able to be so attentive to the body in that process, because this is the temple, and recognizing those feelings when they're coming up, because that is the way that we're going to clean the vehicle. This is the purification and purging process. This is how we allow ourselves to like cure the diseases that contain that are on the earth. It's us. It's not going out there, and it is going out there and promoting green living as an organic expression, but it is not about getting into a state in which saving the world is about saving everything outside of yourself, and then your own entire body and ecosystem is still like in distress, you know, right? The body will always manifest all forms of emotional blockages, okay, for you to be able to know. So as an example, you know, I carry a lot of trauma to the feminine. And this whole entire side of my body over here, the feminine side of my body, I've just got all of my injuries. All of my life's injuries have all been on that side. And it was just like, oh, of course. And when I look at the nature of my own story, if I look at the nature of what I'm sharing with you today, it all contains itself in there. The body is the physical representation of the inner emotional landscape. And so if we can clear out that emotional landscape, if we can begin to remove those emotional blockages as a process, as processing reality, so that we can marry the two, how we are and how we're meeting the phenomena of reality as life is moving through us, we will begin to understand that this whole entire experience that we have incarnated through is about spirit into matter, and that it's not separate and it's not antagonistic. So again, we look at all of the churches that have been created, all of the processes in which we have appraised existential authority. That's because we have spent so much of our time developing that part of our consciousness that has reached its pinnacle point. It cannot go any further. Now it's time for us to go back and say, hey, feminine energy, it's your turn to come in and for us to merge the two together. That is the new paradigm, the inclusion, the warmth, not the disconnect. The sadness that we have, like sitting with the sadness, brings the compassion, brings the sense of knowingness that our friends that we have with us, we can honor, because if they're gone one day, not to say that we need to sit here in situations and go like, oh, I need to feel guilty for myself. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that that sadness, as we relate to a friend that has influenced our lives and impacted us, and family members for that matter, like bringing it back into the heart and then operating and manifesting through that space and clearing out that trauma. So coming back to this Adam and Eve thing again, and the background, the background story of what we're healing and clearing out and making new choices that allows the heart to become more of the resonance, right? We're stepping out of the space in which men particularly, right? All men, okay? Majority of them, okay? In a world, especially in the Western culture and especially in patriarchal times, you know, for us to feel emotion is something that is a very like odd experience, okay? For a man to feel emotion in the past has been something in which that was seen as weakness. The fact that it was seen as weakness in societal structures was the representation of the rejection of emotion and the feminine, right? Okay. So what we're dealing with here is that a lot of our emotions that have not been processed when we're interacting has been through disassociation, right? Disassociation manifests naturally through the endocrine system saying, okay, I can't process this thing. The pain is too much in myself. And so therefore I'm just going to release the hormones in there, and you're going to be like, okay. Right. So when can I have that next chocolate? Why am I addicted to sugar? Why do I need the candy so much? Why Coca-Cola? Why TV? Why the smartphone of the 21st century? Because what it does is it allows ourselves to feel better in the moment relative to the pain. Because when we experience pain, we've been psychologically trained in an unconscious patterning of this background frequency regarding the Virgo-Pisces to go, if you're in pain, get rid of it ASAP because it's uncomfortable. It's an irritation, right? Right? Pain, as in like cutting your arm, for instance, is something to go, yes, I need medication or something to numb it, right? But sadness of a soul that has been lost, and you repress that grief, you repress that process of naturally healing your body to reintegrate all of those emotions. I'm talking from direct experience, man. It's not healthy. It's not healthy at all. Your body just eventually, just over a period of time, just needs to create the cycle within the amygdala to release serotonin into your brain to say, I need more satisfaction in terms of sugar, cakes, chocolates, etc., to be able to just keep that serotonin level happening, right? So we get addicted to things. We get addicted to things because underlying that process is the layer of pain and sadness and karmic dynamics that we need to process. We need to bring it more into ourselves. And the more that we don't do this process, the less we realize how disassociated we really are, right? So this healing of the divine feminine comes through the recognition that Pluto's transit through Capricorn is saying, come on, where's that emotional debris that gets stuck in your collective body, our collective body? It's making us feel like this. One moment you're happy and you're joyful, the next moment you're in the doldrums, like, oh my God, why do I feel this way, right? Pluto's squares to Venus, Pluto's squares to Mars, Pluto's whatever aspect is being made, planetary aspect that's being made to Pluto right now is triggering all of this stuff. And for me personally, I think that with this South Node in Aquarius, there's a lot of like fluffiness on the internet around what that represents. But to me, I think the South Node in Aquarius is about waking up to the realization that there is a lot of trauma that is buried in our subconscious that is going to come up for us to be objectified, liberated from, processed through. And then as we do that, we allow more of the heart-centeredness to be present with ourselves. We're becoming more present. We're becoming more present. We're becoming more present. And the more we become more present, the more you start to notice the heart sensations within yourself. Wow, I'd like to connect with that. Or I'd like to do this. Or I feel more like I can creatively self-actualize, versus that detachment process and just observing through not feeling the heart. But we can't even understand what that's really about until we realize one moment when that gets healed and we go, wow, there's actually more, you know? And that all again manifests from this Virgo-Pisces process of masculine form, ascension. It is only the masculine principle, so men carry the emotion. So we have this whole entire, like even books that have been written around the way in which like a consensus relationship would work. The Betty Crocker and the Marlboro Man. The dad goes out to work, the mom stays at home and nurtures, right? These natural principles are what we have conditioned ourselves to operate through. And you wonder why so many Pluto and Libra generation souls have got parents that were completely polarized growing up, because dad felt that his natural role was not what he wanted. He didn't want to do what he was wanting to do, but he didn't know how to connect his emotions to his social conditioning. So all he did was just wake up through the mind and follow what he needed to do. But deep down inside, his feelings were completely suppressed. And through disassociation, what would happen is he would just be able to allow all of his anger and all of his pain just come out through other ways. And then you would have mom that would also feel like her creative pursuits and desires, etc., were shut down because her role as a consensus model would say, you've got to do this. And so there's a lot of sadness with a lot of our parents that never actually got that opportunity to fully enrich their lives because of the social conditioning and the background influence of how society and how we have created the models of evolution for masculine and feminine principle and the separation that's caused it. That's why you'll notice right now that a lot of us right now are living in experiences where we're wanting to bring more of our authenticity to the table and noticing that relationships themselves are becoming more and more like difficult, but easier at the same time. Difficult in the sense that if we're in a relationship and both of us are conscious, we're not going to be like just going, look, I don't want to, we're confronting each other in that sense and saying, look, I've got my dreams, you've got your dreams, so how are we going to make this work? Right? So again, coming back to this masculine principle, Adam is searching for God in the process. And the feminine principle is like this. Because the body has desires, and again, evolution is through desire. Evolution is through desiring. If you are suppressing your desires, 101, okay, around what you're doing, you're not going to be able to understand the nature of why the desire was there to begin with and to resolve it, okay? I shouldn't do this because of that. I shouldn't do that because of this diet. I shouldn't be eating that because of this information that I read from an outside source that tells me what I should be doing but has never met me in my life before. Okay? Have you ever thought about that once when you've read something in a magazine that's giving you instructions on how to be, but yet that person's never met you in their life. They've never done a blood test to know what type of blood group you are. They've never tested you to understand how you operate in your environment or your emotional dynamics. None of those complexes are even there. And it's gone. But yet we're giving ourselves, and then what we're doing is we're eating some food and we go, wow, I'd really desire that. And you go, nope, my dietary requirement said to me I can't have that. And then you go, but I'm going to eat it. And you eat it because you really desire it, but you feel guilty at the same time. All right? It's just this guilt, this process just gets layered into us. Oh, I feel shameful because I broke this thing over here. Whereas really, we should feel liberated enough to be able to do those things. And I'm not saying if your desire to go and mass murder 1,000 people is something that's good. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying the nature of what your desires are operating through, to understand the dynamics of them. And this is where we become mature in this process, right? Because if we were thinking along those lines, oh, it's okay, someone told me that I can go and do this to this person over here because that's a desire. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the process of our desire nature is existing in the form of the body, and that is what is leading us along our path. But because that has been suppressed, and we don't honor that because of a spiritual overlay, what we have here is then the man that gets really angry with the woman because her attraction and his succumbing to that attraction, right? He has all of these feelings. The succumbing to the attraction is, okay, you've seduced me in that sense. You've allowed me to fall into my desires. Now I'm angry with you because that has stopped me from accessing God. My relationship to God is more important than those desires. And now, because of that, I've led myself along the misguided path, right? So there's anger. You did that. You stopped me from accessing that process. And then the female part, who is naturally the feminine. I mean, how many of you guys, honestly, at least once a day, just walk out to where you live? And maybe you don't live in a place that's beautiful, but just walk out and observe this place. How many of you have sat down for 5 minutes and just asked yourself, how in God's creation, funny enough, intelligence, how did we create a baby? How does a baby know? How does the form know to put the exact process of when the hands need to be developed, when the face needs to be developed, when the process of the baby's telling the mom, hey, look, it's time for me to come, or that process when we feel those emotions? How many of us have already thought about the beauty that exists in this place and honored it in that sacredness? We should be doing more of that. We should be taking pictures of sunsets and reminding ourselves of how beautiful the cycles are of the nature. We should be allowing ourselves to smell the roses and understand the process of what created that life, because we're no separate from it. Just because we can drive cars and create mathematical equations that look all fantastic, at the end of the day, that mathematical algorithm that looks so amazing on a chalkboard, for instance, can only be manifested through the body being alive, and breath is what keeps it alive. So without breathing, that algorithm through the mind cannot manifest. So what is really the deepest, most beautiful, powerful, sacred thing that we all have? It is the divine feminine. It is the process of realization of what it actually represents, the organic being that we incarnate with. How many of you have got mobile telephones and they've got the cover on it and look after that phone so much? But have you ever given yourself the opportunity to give yourself that care that you would give to your car or to your mobile phone? And I'm not saying that you all do this. And again, you don't need to feel guilty. This is not the point. The point is, where is our attention? Not because there's something wrong with us, but that is what is changing. That is what is changing. Coming back to what is giving me nurture, what is giving me care. How am I looking after myself? How am I allowing myself to experience every single day in a way that nourishes me and my soul? Change that paradigm, change that thinking, bringing spirits into matter again. So that we don't feel that we need to feel guilty for allowing our body to feel what we want to feel. Feeling is important. Feeling is really, really important. It is the way in which we are able to move through this experience, to connect, to allow ourselves to include and share, right? When we're operating through the mind has this wonderful capacity to turn around and say, let's bet $1,000 on this roulette number 5. And you go like, well, I don't actually have any money and I really feel nervous about this experience. And the mind's like, yeah, just really cool, man. Don't worry about it. If you don't like win, that will be okay. Somehow it will sort itself out. You kind of do that. And you notice that you lose. And the mind goes, yeah, I'm hungry at the moment. Maybe can we go to the hot dog store? And you're like sitting with this emotional trauma going, okay, this is not okay for me. The body's freaking out, but the mind doesn't have any emotional relationship to it. So there's this wonderful, fascinating thing of how we've used the mind, how we used it to get us to where we are right now. And now it's the transition of integrating the body back into the process, bringing the body back into it. So this Virgo-Pisces axis has been about the separation, right? The manifestation of just the masculine. And now we're bringing raw emotion into the process. We're bringing humanness into it so that we can feel again. And the more that we can feel in our process, the more we're able to express creatively our joy and excitement and our enthusiasm. And your ultimate mantra, follow your inspiration. And when you don't have inspiration, that's fine. There's this wonderful idea that we sit in this process and we go, okay, right now, I don't have an inspiration. Mine's going, you've been told that if you don't have inspiration, then that's okay. This is bad, negative. And I'm saying, when you don't have inspiration and you feel confused, sit with it. Just sit with the confusion. Sit with the fact that you feel lost. I feel lost right now. I have Saturn conjunct my Neptune. I get moments of inspiration of going where I'm going, but ultimately, deep down inside, I'm still super confused about what certain things are happening for me at this point in time. And I'm like, okay. Like, I'll be okay with being confused at this stage, because confusion to me is the process of shifting from one place to another. And that it's just that interim period in which there is no ego identification with what is supposedly supposed to be what I think I should be doing versus where my body is taking me. Right? So we're watching our experience, we're being more present with the moment, we're being able to actually access the depth of what we are here to feel and experience and then process and then share. And it's exactly that. Like, Johnny, you wrote it beautifully there. It's like the North Node in Leo is the time to follow your heart first, before the mind. Allow your inspiration to be the navigation tool and to transcend the fear that is part of the reptilian brain, to allow yourself to not be hijacked by the amygdala, to not be hijacked by this concept of let go, let go. To me, the idea of letting go is hilarious because it gives us the impression that we've been in control the whole time. We haven't. It's been the other way around. We haven't been in control. The body has been in control in that sense. It's been dictating to us the whole entire life. Fear this, don't do that, don't run around over there. Don't make this decision. Don't follow this bliss over here. Whereas really, the more you wake up to yourself, the more you're actually taking control of your story, right? Whether it be the spectrum of somebody that has had a wonderful life, that has not had any many traumatic experiences, that feels compelled to create a business that supports entrepreneurs that come from certain places, that encourages community growth, that inspires people to find their own individuality, to nurture that process. Right? For somebody that is coming from a traumatized situation where there's been a lot of abuse, there's been a lot of like sexual experiences that have traumatized them, where there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of anger, to allow yourself to be in that space and to honor thatness as part of your journey, that it is no better or worse, it just is. And that we're all here in that space to embrace ourselves as an ongoing evolutionary process. We're flying through space and God knows how, at what rate, right? The fact that the mind tries to even conceive that process is hilarious. So let's sit back, allow ourselves to understand what the body gives us, allow our understands how we can honor the inspiration, recognize that we're so incredibly honored to experience something like this. And again, the complexity of the situation is very, very vast. I'm not talking about there are many of us that are very privileged in our experience, and there are many souls that are coming from experiences like in the East. We're talking about places in Africa, as an example, a lot of tribes, a lot of communities, a lot of places that are not in the position that we're in to experience this. It doesn't mean that that part of the world is like, look at that part of the world and go, oh my God, like, how can somebody in Africa, as an example, that's living in a tribe feel what you're sharing with me right now? Well, obviously not, because the context of the existence is so diverse, and that it doesn't matter, because our purpose right now is to live this existence and to bring through and incarnate into this material form what we are here to share and exceed. It's all about the cultivation of awareness. It's all about the cultivation of our ability to see what we have come to do and understand about ourselves. And the North Node in Leo is the time for activation. It's the time for activation of what that means for you. So in your chart, look where the South Node sits, whatever house it's in, okay? So in my case, I'll have the transiting South Node moving through my first house, okay? Look where the natal Uranus is. Look where natal Uranus is. Natal Uranus will tell you specifically where the South Node is going to be evolving through. So there's 3 layers. I've mentioned 2. 3 layers. You're looking at the South Node. First, identify where the South Node is in Aquarius. Then identify where your Uranus is in your chart. Why? Because Uranus is the ruling planet of Aquarius. Then understand those dynamics. Okay, so I have Uranus in the 11th house of the astrology chart in Sagittarius. Then look at where transiting Uranus is today in Aries. You combine those 3 together and you'll have the dynamics of what you are letting go, liberating from, detaching from, and breaking free from. Whatever karmic dynamics and complexities are held within that context. Then look where the North Node is, polarity, obviously 180 degrees. Look where the Sun is natally in your chart, okay? And then watch the transiting Sun over the year, because every single month the Sun's going to move into a different sign, so it's going to activate different themes that over the year will create a whole entire circle of activation of your North Node and your Leo. Does that make sense? Okay, so for me, I'm telling you guys straight, the future is not about flat screen TVs and investments in large, like, sofas that are engaged in that. The future is investing in yourself through self-awareness. So an astrologer, as an example, that wants to understand your chart, or that you want to understand your chart, is your best friend. Whatever, if you feel that numerology is the thing that you resonate with, go to somebody that teaches, learn numerology, learn it for yourself. Like, upgrade your capacity to become self-aware and to become into that state of what allows you to objectify your reality. Learn numerology, learn tarot, go and speak to a tarot person, like whatever it is, any astrologer for that matter. Like, seek it out as your gift to yourself. Because the more that you're able to access that's within yourself, the more that you can share, the more you can give, the more you can be present. And by doing that, you can contribute to the livelihood of yourself. If that's all you want to do, that's beautiful in itself. There is no rules around what you should do with your time on earth. That's your decision. And that's why, in that sense, and there are natural laws that rule that, right? Again, like I said, don't take that into the context of go, okay, well, I hate my neighbor, so I'm just going to go hit him in the head. Like, yeah, go do that, fine. But you also need to deal with the consequences as well. You understand? So the inspiration that I'm wanting to share here is that the transition from Virgo-Pisces has coming through this deep suppression of the feminine form and the honoring of just this masculine principle, to now saying the feminine is rising within ourselves. And when I say feminine, I mean not feminism. I don't mean the honoring of sexuality through magazines that perpetuate the woman's body and breasts and legs in that sense, because that's a sexualization of the feminine. That's not what they're here for. I'm not talking about it in that sense. I'm talking about for the love of your own self-sustainability, for the realization that this is an ecosystem. This body has an ecosystem, okay? And that this ecosystem runs and beautifully controls the way that you operate. Every cell in your body is operating. So you'll drink, say, for instance, a sugary drink, and then all of a sudden your body like, dude, we need to do something about this, and it sends insulin to a certain place. Like the fact that it can do that in itself is amazing. We've got to give it credit, right? Each of us, watch what your body tells you. Watch what your body tells you. And it's so empowering. And that's what it is. It's bringing it back to here, healing this part of ourselves, because then when we do this, we will naturally begin to make choices that honor the sacredness of nature outside of ourselves. We won't need to go outside of ourselves to fix it there. We fix it here. When we fix it here, then naturally we vibrate in a way that fixes out, it resonates outwards. And that's the key. That's the transition. So this Leo-Aquarius thing is about detaching from all forms of trauma, objectifying the nature of, liberating ourselves from belief systems, patterns, and fears that kept us in a state of whatever, and then moving into that North Node naturally. You don't even have to go and do that. You don't have to go, okay, it's my North Node right now. It's in the 7th house. I've got to go through relationships and love. No. Just allow yourself to see that whatever dynamics you carry in your chart, they're naturally going to operate. Just give yourself the opportunity to get in touch with them. So like for me as an example, right? South Node sits in the south. My South Node, the transiting South Node is in Aquarius in the 1st house, right? My Uranus sits in the 11th house. So what I'm doing here is I'm objectifying the nature of past dynamics. So when I was young, so when I was at the age of 3, around about that period of time, I had an experience in which created the initial like sanskara that my soul carries around the separation, okay? Separation wound, okay? And that separation wound created a dissociative behavior inside of myself that I didn't even know that was what was happening, okay? And when I was 7 years old, I went to school, and my birth date is at the end of the year. And in school in South Africa begins at the beginning. So what happened was that I would go to school 1 year. So I would be turning, say for instance, 8, where all of the people that I was going to school with at that in my grade would be already turning 7 at the beginning of the year. So I'd always like be ahead of them in terms of their birthday, or behind them in terms of their birth date in the year, but 1 year kind of like older in that way. So when I would have like events, like sporting events as an example, I would always be taken away from all of my friends and put into the group of people that were ahead of me, because that was the age group that I was belonging to. And I experienced so much, like that's how I naturally responded to this, right? Other people would respond differently, so it's not something that's universal. But the way that my soul responded to group dynamics was a complete isolation and detachment and trauma, which left me to have emotional suppression within inside of myself of not being able to interact in a group because of some feelings of maybe being rejected, some feelings of the trauma coming up to the surface, and whatever, right? Whatever dynamics there was, this like I was not worthy enough, all the shameful stuff, etc. And now what's manifesting through me as this the South Node is moving into Aquarius, or was moved into Aquarius, and it's triggering the natal Uranus, right? My natal Uranus is in the 11th house, so all of that trauma is coming to the surface. But because my transiting Uranus is in my 4th house, it's giving me the opportunity to objectify the nature of those emotional dynamics and recognize that this is not where I am today. It has absolutely nothing to do with where I am today. Okay, that was what happened then. But as I kind of like release those feelings and see that that part of my experience, that disassociation, needs to be healed through just interacting, I can actually begin to notice that becoming part of group dynamics is something that I do want, and that I don't need to be detached and not on it, because that's the point. The emotions are right here. They're right in my face. And I'm like, oh my God, my body's going, we've got to run away from this. We've got to run away from these emotions. Whereas I'm choosing to go in this time around, no, I know why those emotions are there. They're there because of the trauma that exists in a different timeline. And that all I need to do is just objectify that process and release those emotions through whatever methodology, so that I can actually bring more of my soul that has been fragmented into myself. North Node Leo, bringing more of the soul back into the self for creative self-actualization. Okay, so I'm going to take a breather right now because I've been online for an hour and 30 minutes, which is insane. Time just, I don't even know where it goes. Nowhere, apparently. So yeah, I'm just going to take a breather. And I see people in the comments have been writing, so Um, let's see what happens. I don't really have anything at this point in time that's coming out naturally through this process. So I'd love to maybe hear some of your thoughts around what I've shared, maybe how you've maybe resonated what I've shared, maybe anything that I can go over again to kind of clarify. So yeah, just to kind of feel like doing that for a bit as a way of winding down maybe. So like I said, anybody that's got questions for me around what I've shared and just interacting with that for a bit, I'll have a look at the stream at this stage. Exactly, integration. Lots of people just saying whether Uranus is in their chart. So like Stella Cruz talks about 10th house Uranus and Leo. So as a natural law, your soul's wanting to decondition itself from all forms of identifications that have been probably projected onto you as what you need to do with your life. And you're trying to like liberate that and give yourself an opportunity to really follow what you feel is passionate for yourself. Let's see. So one soul says, I meant Pluto and Sagittarius law. So doesn't Virgo bring the head and heart together? Yeah, I've absolutely, Virgo is so much about the process of bringing us into the physical, okay? And in patriarchal kind of development of Virgo, it's been a very internal process through Mercury. But to me, I feel like asteroids like Chiron as an example, and Ceres, the archetype of Ceres, they play a very powerful role in the way that Virgo manifests on a level that is honoring the feminine. So to me, I feel like Virgo, has a very strong association with those asteroids, like direct experience of life, like how you're actually interacting and processing life as it's going, how you're processing this live stream, how am I processing this live stream, and how am I becoming aware of that process, right? So Alexander was talking about, would you like to explain more how your stepfather shaped your personality and the truth you tell yourself of who you are? That's such a powerful thing because, I mean, my dad and mom split very early. In fact, when Pluto was actually transiting over my Saturn, they had split. So early on, my association with my dad in itself and those symbolic representations were severed, naturally, evolutionary speaking. Then my stepfather came into the process, and he was very much a soul that he had Neptune and Saturn conjunction, and he was very much connected to nature. But he had so much trauma emotionally in himself that the way that he tried to express those truths was very harsh. So what landed up happening for me was the internal dialogue around, if I do anything, it's going to be wrong, and that any form of any responsibility that I need to take for in my life, I emotionally disassociate from. Okay, so here's another great example. If for me to be able to take charge of my life is such a difficult thing, because the father archetype through me growing up has been so like heavily twisted and distorted, and the symbolic representation of natural nurture and guidance has not been there in a way that's been healthy. So but I know it in myself, and that's part of my own personal journey, is like as I awaken my own story, Sun conjunct Pluto and Saturn in the 10th house, I naturally bring that archetype into play. But it has to come through the awakening of my emotions. But I have to go through the process of looking at all of where those emotions have been displaced, heal through those emotions, go through that pain, go through that trauma, and then bring into the equation more of what I consider to be healthy Capricorn, which is just boundaries, the ability to create direction and boundaries through soft nurture. So how my personality was shaped again was like feeling really uncomfortable knowing how to make direction in a way that wasn't maybe harsh. So the way I would give direction is awesome, but I would also, it would be a case where like boundaries and direction would be put into place, but maybe the emotional capacity wasn't as in you know, as is being developed at this stage. Feelings of there's a lot of abuse, like experienced a lot of abuse through one situation I can remember very, very distinctly that went against all natural law for me. And that still kind of like sits with me today, where I don't want to put that out on my own children. And so a lot of self-talk or emotional responses and reactions where, say for instance, I was like 6 years old and I broke like a small little window. I wouldn't be told that this is okay and you're a child and you don't understand this, and you know, breaking a window is something that, you know, in the future just be mindful of. Like the way that that would be responded is like, this is your fault, this is what's wrong with you. And so therefore my amygdala plus the natural way in which my brain and my biology would work would just be like, any single time that something would break, my emotional body would just go, shit, I don't want to do this. So therefore I'm just not going to interact with it at all and disassociate. And I spent a great deal of my time not knowing that that was occurring, but knowing that that wasn't me. And it's only over the last like 2 years when my Saturn return hits that I become like acutely aware of that response mechanism. And it's only recently where I've begun to actually allow myself to know that all emotional responses that I have are all coming from this patterning and how the brain works. And that's what I say. It's like all of us are trying to let go of control. And I'm saying, no, that's the opposite. We have been controlled by the body. And it's that when you wake up, you realize that you are needing to be in control of yourself. You've never had control. It's the other way around. So yeah, I don't know if that kind of answers your question in that sense there. But an opportunity for me to process my own stuff. So thank you. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Lana Houston saying, wish you would as letter email or re-record these. Could you explain to me what you mean by that? Like these live streams are recorded, by the way. Sorry guys, I really hope that you're not like getting upset with me if I'm not able to respond to any of your questions that you're writing in the chat. At this point in time, it's not because like I'm ignoring you or choosing selectively. It's just that right now for me, where I am right now is like kind of just like feeling into how I can respond to certain things, and a lot of information that I see over here will be just so much that, you know. Okay, so this is a great question. Tarot astrologer, Australia. Is it possible to explain on a general level, so it applies to all watching, the relationship between natal and transiting Uranus, also natal and transiting Sun? Okay, so the natal planet in itself, and Johnny, I got that question out. Thanks for reminding me there. So the natal planetary system, so in my case, Uranus in 11th house, okay, is operating through the dynamic of what your soul has. It's like a template, okay? So it's there. It's like the framework, okay? So all energy moving through like your being, through the neutrino field, is moving and expressing itself through that color, okay? So here's a great example. Everybody right now, you can see on the screen me, okay? That's the expression of how I'm expressing myself every single day will always be through the same natal Uranus, okay? Right? 11th house experience. But let's say, for instance, I have a transiting planet. Then the transiting planet would be as if I would take like a blue screen and apply it over the screen here, so that when you are interacting with me, you weren't seeing what you're seeing right now. You would see me through this blue screen. And imagine that the blue screen was moving slowly across what you're seeing, okay? So that would be the transit, right? So if it was Mercury, it would move across like that. If it was Pluto, as you know, we've been having Pluto move across since 2008. So it's like slowly like this, right? Slowly changing the formality of our reality. So the natal planet of Uranus correlates to the nature of how that planet is operating. It's never going to change. It's the same. Okay? It's your individuation process. So for me, I'm deconditioning myself from all identities and emotional paradoxes and complexes associated with groups. Okay? 11th house. Right? Aspirations, ideas. Now, because transiting Uranus is moving in my 4th house in Aries, the way that I'm relating to that natal planet is through the 4th house Aries. So it's about me objectifying the nature of the emotional connection I have to that Uranus in the 11th house. The relatability. How am I relating? So what is the next layer? How is that Uranus in the 11th house being deconditioned? And right now, for me, through the transit, it's through the 4th house. So let's give another example. Uranus is in the 8th house, natally. Transiting Uranus is moving through the 1st. Okay? The soul comes into this lifetime with deep trauma around dynamics around trust, intimacy, and commitment. Okay? So that's the base work. That's the framework. Transiting Uranus in the 1st house is that the soul in this lifetime, relative to that transit, is beginning to discover, Aries, new ways to objectify Uranus, the way in which it's responded, Aries, to experiences of emotional abandonment and betrayal. So it's an experiment. It's like a new direction is being formed over here. It doesn't know why it's happening, but it's a new direction. It'll be felt. When you have Uranus transiting the 1st house, you're like, oh my God, I have no idea where I'm going in life, but I just got to follow the madness, right? So there are new directions. If Uranus was in the 3rd house, as an example, the soul would go through an experience transiting Uranus, moving through the 3rd house, natal Uranus in the 9th. The way that it would work is that Uranus would be bringing new forms of language, Gemini, 3rd house, into your field in order to objectify the way that you have intellectualized all forms of intimacy, emotional connections, and so on and so forth, and to liberate yourself from all forms of intellectualizations that you've had. 3rd house, intellectualization, words. So you might be liberating yourself from a certain mindset that you've had. Okay, does that make sense? So tarot astrology, I know that you asked about the sun. So again, the sun is natally. So I have a natal sun in the 10th house Scorpio. That destination is about the soul in this lifetime bringing prana to transforming its sense of identity. Sense of identity, 10th house, transformation, Scorpio, sun, this is where I'm here to inspire myself through this process. Transiting sun will be moving around the zodiac. So it'll move around my 1st house and I'll watch and have experiences in which people, like a new direction we're forming. Sun will move into my 2nd house. Transiting sun will move into my 2nd house. And all of a sudden, I'll start to then look at the nature of my values associated with what I give to this new direction. Transiting sun will move into my 3rd house, and you get the picture. As it goes around the zodiac, it influences and builds layers onto the overall development of what the soul's intention is, okay? Okay. Yes, exactly. Like there's so much to digest. This video is something that you just watch and watch and watch and watch and watch and watch, and all this many layers. Okay. Johnny, is there a connection with the inner feminine and inner child? Yes, that is correct. There is. To me, the Trinity, the masculine, the feminine, and the middle. So you know how Raising Vibrations' logo is the 2 flower of lives, and as the flower of life merges into the middle, it creates the 3rd. Okay, so the inner child is that Leo archetype. So when the masculine principle is in your body, it's direction and it's guidance. Masculine form, exploration, curiosity, allowing yourself to expand. Yang energy. So today, in the seat, I'm fully in yang energy. It's like it's there. After this experience, and right now, feminine form, okay? This is water that contains apple cider vinegar plus ginger and lemon. And the purpose of this experience is that I would like to give my throat, as well as my voice, the opportunity to not only, and also my body as well, that what I'm drinking and nourishing it. That's the feminine. Okay. The inner child is what you're experiencing off me. The joy, the excitement. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in a candy store, just sharing my joy with everybody at this experience, sharing my insight, sharing what I love to do, amongst other things. Does that make sense? So the inner child is our capacity to follow what is innocence, that has no form of time and space, that just is moving through joy and inspiration, that is not conditioned by thinking patterns. The masculine form is to say, here I am, you have to stand up for you. So when you're interacting with other people and they're like being abusive to you, your masculine principle comes up and says, look, boundary, this is not okay for me. This is not all right. Okay? Feminine form, operating simultaneously, says, how do I nurture those emotions? How do I give myself, and this is the point of today's conversation, how do you give yourself the emotional nurturance to keep your inner child good, happy? And again, the concept of the inner child is very different to other things. I'm just merely saying inspiration. Just observe a child running around at the age of 2 years old. Like, there's just a sense of wonderment. It's like everything is possible. So that's that part here. Everything's possible. Give yourself that opportunity through the adult masculine and through the adult feminine. And it's the feminine part that we're bringing into the process as a way of connecting with those feelings. Okay. Okay. I think that's it for me today, everyone. I really hope, I know that you enjoyed this experience. I most certainly had loads and loads and loads and loads of fun doing this. And at any point in time that you feel inspired to, you know, have an astrology reading with myself or connect in some way, do like a learn your chart as an example, get taught astrology through myself, be interested in the Metamorphosis program. Those are things that keep me in this process, and they give me the opportunity to connect with you and have impact and influence through what you are currently going through at that point in time. So, I encourage you to do those things as well. But in terms of today's space, I truly am grateful for your attention. I'm truly grateful for your time. And I really hope that I was able to share information with you in a way that, has given you the value of that time, which is maybe something we should talk about in another live stream, the nature of value and how that is changing in that sense. Okay? Cool. So I really hope that everybody enjoyed this. Like I said, for the minute of time, thanks very much for supporting this channel. Thanks very much for supporting yourself through this process. And again, have a wonderful week, okay? Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.